All right, so what I'm trying to do here is, again, I'm trying to show you the concept that will lead you into exploring, because it's almost like when you first learn, say, like a simple idea like a trill or something, right? You don't just learn that and only play it there. You'll start learning it up here in A minor pentatonic or something, right? And then you could use it on the next string. You know, you just start bringing it all over the place, and then that idea ends up being you can start doing, say, tapping with that. Now you're doing the same concept where you're tapping one note, right? It's the same as doing this kind of thing, right? But now you could start walking it down. And that's how you start exploring ideas, because that just came out of a simple idea of that. But now you start moving it around, and it's that little simple idea, and you start exploring on your own with it. And just use simple scales like the pentatonic scale, or if you know like melodic minor or anything like that, start using it with that kind of stuff. Start out simple and advance to more complicated. But it's the same thing with, that's a very simple lick, right? This is a little more complex. Doing chromatic notes and then an arpeggio. That concept is a lot more difficult than just hammering on two notes. But in itself, it's contained as a single concept. Now start exploring and doing that with different scales, different scale patterns, arpeggio shapes. Think outside of the box. Don't even throw all your knowledge away and just start using the pattern and just picking out weird notes and see what happens. But then after you do that, try and define what's happening so that even if you stumble on something cool, then you're like, wait a second, but why is that cool? And that kind of helps you use it in the future. Let's go over one more concept. So in this solo, he does, in this little lick idea, he does, when he gets to this part, so that is just, again, walking up arpeggios. And a good thing to do is start learning, if you're not already familiar with it, your arpeggios, just like your major and minor, say. So starting on A major arpeggio would be A, 5th fret of the E string, C sharp, 4th fret of the A string, and E, which would be the 7th fret of the A string. So now if you take that pattern on the next string down, it's still a major arpeggio, but it's a D major arpeggio. So the bottom note is your root note. Go down another string. Now if you go down another string, you're going to have to change the shape. And then go back to that normal shape. And that's actually another thing I wanted to talk about. All this stuff that all these licks that I say he plays on this fret or that, he has his guitar tuned all in fourths. So his fingering is a little different than ours. So especially like when he plays this lick, he can play it where he just bars that 3rd fret. But then when we're doing this, he can't do that same thing. It's down a half step. So anyway, so back to this arpeggio idea. What you want to do is just take that simple shape. Now to make it minor, you just lower that 3rd down a half step. So instead of 5th fret E string, 4th fret A string, and 7th fret A string, you play the 3rd fret of the A string. So instead of, okay? Now, if you know those two arpeggios, the major and minor, that shape, and that's just a 1-octave arpeggio, you can use that over a whole bunch of stuff. So if say you have a 2-5-1 progression in the key of A major, so you have a B minor 7 to an E7 to an A major 7, right? Very common, simple jazz progression. You could play those arpeggios. So the first one's a B minor, then the next one's an E7, which this is basically a major triad with a flatted 7. So you just play the E major triad, and then when you go back to the A major 7, again you play that A major arpeggio. So it's two patterns, a minor pattern for B, a major pattern for E, and a major pattern for A. Now, if you want to just go up, that A major pattern, you can play it up an octave. So if you play that whole sequence, you have B minor to E major to A major. So what you want to do is you want to try and take that very simple concept of just a major or minor arpeggio. Again, it's a root third or fifth, nothing else. Don't get into scale tones, don't get into anything crazy, and just start experimenting over all the chord progressions you can think of. Take that, we did it, do it in a blues, a 1-4-5, or do it in, say, this 2-5-1 progression. Expand it to a 6-2-5-1. And that 6th chord is just an F sharp minor to a B minor to an E dominant 7 to an A major. So that first arpeggio would obviously be a minor arpeggio, and you'd have to a B minor arpeggio to an E major arpeggio to an A major arpeggio. So you could hear that progression in there. Right? You hear, besides those chromatic little walking tones, you hear that arpeggio because the chord progression, because you're just playing the main notes of those chords. Another good thing to do again is, and I'm just trying to touch on this as an idea, as a concept. Later we're going to go into a pretty deep lesson on this and how to go crazy with it. But another thing to do is to take arpeggios that aren't exactly like an A major. If you have an A major chord, right, you can play that E major arpeggio over there. Right? So that shape right here is the same as this. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because I want an A drone note here. So if I play an A major arpeggio over that, right, that's just the root, third, and fifth. Well, if I play an E major arpeggio over that, you get a totally different sound out of that. And what that's doing is it's emphasizing different chord tones. Realistically, you're just playing an E major triad over an A major chord. But what you get is you get that fifth of the chord, right? And then you get the major 7. And then you get the 9, which is always a cool tone. Right? So you get... So now what you can start doing is playing 2 arpeggios over each chord. So over A major, you would say play A and an E. Over B minor, there's a whole bunch of things. Again, this is getting a little further into what I wanted to get into. But you could start experiment with doing that kind of thing. And that's the way to start, for me, was a great way to learn how to improvise over chord changes. Because you're only dealing with primary tones, root, third, and fifth. you can't hit a wrong note. It's either a major third or a minor third, and then you have the root and the fifth. And you can just, again, really experiment with playing over a blues progression. Do nothing more than play root third and fifth over each chord. But I'm not saying just play the root third and fifth here. Like that's A major. You have a whole root third and fifth here and a root third and fifth here, right? Then you have, so you have arpeggios all over the place. Find those arpeggios, but don't go crazy. Don't learn the whole fret. Just limit yourself to maybe 2 octaves of an arpeggio. Right? Again, there's a million topics to talk about on this, or a million things that you can do to experiment, but start with that simple 1 arpeggio over 1 chord, and then maybe expand to 2 arpeggios, the main arpeggio and another one, which will give you some extensions of that chord. Anyway, again, we'll get into a lesson like that in the future. Out of this whole lick, those are the 2 things that I really saw in this. There was a lot of, it's that legato with arpeggios, and then it's using root third and fifth kind of our inversions over certain chords. And that's a huge lesson, both of those subjects. So take those, run with them, try a million different ideas, and then break out of the box and try different things. And I think it will go a long way in your playing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Like I said, we got a lot more lessons coming up. This week's probably going to be a little slow again. We got one more of Carl's Van Halen lessons, his Van Halen sessions. That's being edited right now, so that will be up next week. And then probably be another week before some things come up. But once they do, I still have a long Scott Henderson video on Creepin' Terror that I'm trying to get to. I actually got 2 cool Mr. Big Paul Gilbert things I want to get to. And they may be a little further away from like the jazz fusion chromatic thing that we talk about, but there are some cool ideas in there that I want to talk about, how he builds his solo and how he takes scales and combine those to kind of make his own scales. Anyway, a lot of talking. Sorry about that. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Check out guitarbreakdown.com and keep coming back to our channel on YouTube. And if you like what you're seeing, please click the like button and the subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Helps us know that you guys like what we're doing and want to see more free stuff. And I will see you on the next lesson. Thanks, guys.